I'm audible to all.
You
My
are.
name is My name is Kalpana from Committee for International Commission on Large Dams India, INCOLD. On behalf of INCOLD, we extend a hearty welcome to the dignitaries, ICOLD President Mr. Michael Roger, ICOLD Vice President Mr. Devendra Kumar Sharma, and President INCOLD, Chair ICOLD YEF Mr. Elias Papista, ICOLD YEF Board Members, INCOLD YEF Chair Mr. Amit Gautam, INCOLD Secretary General Mr. Aditya Kumar Dinkar, Treasurer Dr. G.B. Patel, our esteemed guest from abroad, Chair and members of ICOLD INCOLD YEF, and today's speaker, Ms. Maria Goel Pons, dam specialist from World Bank and other dignitaries from India and abroad. Kindly excuse if we missed names of some of eminent ICOL family members. We convey our sincere thanks to all the professionals for their time and presence for today's webinar on the topic, the future of rivers. This is the first joint activity being organized by ICOL YEF and INCOL YEF for the benefit of the young dam professionals to motivate them to have many such activities in future, to create network for young engineers, to provide a platform and opportunity for exchange of their knowledge transfer. It is a proud privilege and is of a great moment for ICOLD, INCOLD Young Engineers Forum to organize this activity jointly, which is being attended by the younger professionals from India and other countries like French ICOL Committee, Mozambique Commission on Dams, Swiss Cold, Morocco ICOL Committee, etc. Now we invite Mr. D.K. Sharma, President INCOL, Vice President ICOL, for the welcome address and to share his experience on the topic of the webinar on the future of rivers. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Kalpana. Thank you very much. Mr. President, I called Michael Rogers, Dr. R.K. Gupta, Vice President INCOLD, Mr. A.K. Dinkar, Secretary General INCOLD, Mr. Elias Papitas, Chair ICOLD YEF, Mr. Amit Gautam, Chair INCOLD YEF, members of Mozambique Dam Commission, members of French and Morocco Dam Commission, Ms. Maria Goel, Dam Specialist from the World Bank, officers of INCOLD, delegates of Young Engineers Forum from different parts of the world, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Committee of the International Commission on Large Dams, India, INCOLD, and the International Commission on Large Dams, ICOLD, it's my proud privilege to welcome you all to this virtual webinar on future of rivers being presented by Ms. Maria Goel, Dam Specialist from the World Bank. Today's topic, the future of rivers, is most relevant to India as well as to the rest of the world. Most of the delegates would know that India is one of the most water-stressed country with 17% of the world's population and only 3.5% of the water share. Only silver lining in India is that we receive around 1,100 millimeter of average annual rainfall. But at the same time, most of this rainfall occurs during 45 to 60 days during the summer monsoon. We need to retain this rainfall in whatever form we can. Best way is to plant the trees in the catchment area of the rivers as well as along banks of the river. A buffer is required to be created to store water underground such that it gets released in the river during the remaining 300 days of the year. Globally, as most of you are aware, we are going to face severe extreme events due to climate change. Fortunately for India, most parts of the country are likely to receive higher rainfall due to impact of the climate change. But at the same time, we have to understand that number of rainy days are likely to get reduced, and rainfall distribution will also undergo change. We are already experiencing some of the driest and hottest weather on record in many parts of the world. Rivers throughout the world are struggling to cope up with changing weather patterns. A study has found that between 51 to 60% of the 64 million cubic meters, 64 million kilometers of rivers and streams on Earth that were investigated stop flowing periodically or run dry as part of the for a part of the year. So you can understand that many rivers, most of the rivers are not perennial rivers because the water comes through the rainfall which goes into underground, which is retained in the buffer zone along the river. This pattern of drying of the river or the river stopping periodically for a part of a year, this pattern calls for storage of water underground as well as on the surface wherever it is possible. Underdeveloped and developing countries throughout the world are going to suffer more due to climate change as most of the developed world has already created sufficient per capita storage for their population. Ladies and gentlemen, let me share with you some of my personal experiences. During the tenure while I was chairman of Bhakra Byas Management Board, we planted around 1 million trees in little more than 3 years in the project areas as well as in the catchment areas of the projects. This idea of tree plantation came from the basic fact that though the rainfall in the catchment area increased during the last few years, yet runoff in the rivers Satluj and Byas was decreasing. This unusual behavior was mainly due to change in annual distribution pattern of rainfall. Increase of vegetation cover along the rivers would reverse this pattern of decreased runoff. Construction of small check dams of few meters high along river course in the plains in India has also improved groundwater and revived rivers in many parts of the country. It is important to save rivers for our future generations. Unless we do that, our future generations will never excuse us for what the havoc we would play with the climate. It is also very heartening for me to note that ICOLD YEF India or YEF INCOLD was launched on 2nd of July 2021, and today they are co-organizers of this virtual webinar with ICOLD YEF and others. Ladies and gentlemen, see, we are passing through difficult era these days, and I would like to extend my sincere prayers and thoughts for the lives lost in the great turmoil that came with the wake of COVID-19. In ICOLD, we have also lost one of our vice presidents due to COVID-19. Despite challenges, this COVID-19 crisis has shown that what greater cooperation across borders can do to turn the tide with vaccination programs already making a dent. I'm really happy to share with you, in India, as on date, we have administered over 1.02 billion doses. 305 million people have already been fully vaccinated. Fortunately, COVID situation is now improving worldwide. In the end, I would like to thank ICOLD YEF, INCOLD YEF, Mozambique Commission on Dams, French Commission on Dams, and Morocco Commission on Dams. ICOLD and World Bank for organizing this webinar. So I'll not take a lot of your time. And with this, I'll hand it over to the organizers. And I would like to thank you for your kind attention. Kalpana, you can
Thank you,
take over.
sir. Thank you for your thoughtful address, which will set the tone of deliberations for this session. We also have with us ICOLD Vice President Eric Sefre. I would like to welcome him as well. Welcome, sir. Now I request my colleague from IT team to play the recorded message received from ICOLD President Mr. Michael Roger on this occasion. Over to you, IT team, please.
Hello, dear honored board members of the ICOLD Young Engineers Forum. It's great to be with you today. I wish I could be there in person, but I hope that you accept this virtual reading. As ICOLD president, I'm honored to address this important board meeting for our Young Engineers Forum. I wish to thank YEF Chair Elias Baptista for the kind invitation for me to make this address. The formation of the ICOLD Young Engineers Forum has been the motivation for many countries to formally recognize the young professionals within their national organizations. Since the first official YEF meeting in 2011, 23 national committees have now formed their own national organization of young engineers. I think that's great. I think that YEF and the ICOLD board itself should commit over the next few years to work together to achieve a goal of establishing a YEF group in each of the active national ICOLD committees. The integration of our younger members into ICOLD should be seen as a high priority for our organization. The Young Engineers Forum, I believe, is a vital group to ICOLD family. It's our future. It offers a place within ICOLD to recognize the importance of the role of the next generation of professionals for dams and levees. And it provides opportunities for meaningful participation in ICOLD. Since 2011, the Young Engineers Forum has provided that place within ICOLD for our young engineers to meet, relate to each other within this organization, an organization that sometimes seems to be dominated by older, more seasoned veterans of the profession. I think ICOLD is an amazing forum to share knowledge and communicate our lessons learned. And our YEF group represents the commitment of our profession in fact, the commitment of ICOLD to the future of the planet with clean and renewable infrastructure to support an ever-growing, environmentally aware population. So as you get started in your meeting, I just wanted to take a few minutes to bring you up to date on a few things that the board has been doing and to wish you good luck. First of all, just a few updates on some key ICOLD board actions. First of all, our ICOLD board and our central office staff remain healthy and are safe. Unfortunately, you probably heard by now that we lost ICOLD Vice President Carlos Enrique Medeiros from Brazil over the summer due to complications from COVID-19. We are all very saddened at the loss of this great man, and we continue to work hard for ICOLD in his memory and in his honor. The board has been meeting to keep up the business and the planning for ICOLD. We've had 7 meetings since March of 2020 with the preponderance of our work focus on critical planning for the future for our ICOLD meetings. And we continue to have to postpone our meetings, but I think we have got to the point now where we're satisfied that we have a good schedule for moving to the future. The board members, including myself, have been fortunate to participate in many meetings both virtually and recently in person. Um, an example of a virtual gathering was the YEF inaugural event for India in July, where India joined ICOLD as the 23rd YEF group in ICOLD. So I'm very excited to be part of that. And just last month in Canary, Spain, I was there in person for the third International Dam Safety Symposium, co-sponsored by Spain, China, Brazil, and the United States. One of the biggest things that have come out of our board meetings that I'm really excited about is a proposed change to the ICOLD bylaws for YEF representation in our technical committees. It would formally add in our bylaws the position of a second vice chair for all technical committees that could only be filled by a YEF person. And so this change to the bylaws will come to a vote in the General Assembly meeting in November of this year for ICOLD. So speaking of November, in 2021, although we will not be meeting in person, we are going to have some virtual meetings. We have our usual meeting of technical chairs. There'll be a symposium sponsored by the French National Committee with some technical committee workshops. And then, of course, our General Assembly meeting, which is required by law to conduct the business of ICOLD on November 19th. It should be noted that young engineers from our Young Engineers Forum will get a 40% discount on the registration fees for the symposium and technical.
पुराना वाला भेजूं सर आपको?
And I'll give you some more information. The general organization of our ICOLD 2021 virtual meetings is shown on this slide, and more information can be found at the website www.icold2021.org. Looking out beyond this year, this is our schedule, and I think it's a pretty good schedule, pretty firm, starting with our Congress next May and June in Marseille. Returning to the roots of ICOLD, where we were founded in France, I'm very excited about this Marseille conference. I'm hoping that many of you can show up there in person. I think it's going to be one of the best ICOLD congresses in a long time as we come out of the pandemic and we start coming together in person. And I'm very excited to be in Marseille next summer. Following that, in 2023, we'll be Gothenburg, Sweden. 2024, we have rescheduled our New Delhi meeting to 2024. And the new INCOLD has been very patient and understanding as these other national committees have. But India in particular has been rescheduled a number of times. So I'm very grateful to that group. 2025 will be the Congress. We've now reset our scheduling for Congresses for every 3 years, starting in 2022 in Marseille, then 2025 in China. And then finally, 2026 will be the postponed meeting for the annual meeting in Shiraz, Iran. So with that, I will say thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope that you have a very good meeting in your board. Remember, we're counting on you, our younger members of our ICOLD family, our YEF family. We expect you to lead us to keep our commitment of ICOLD for better and safer dams for a better world. So again, I wish you all the best. I wish you all safety and peace, and I look forward to seeing you in person next summer in Marseille. God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. We place on record the gratitude for the beautiful presentation from ICOLD President, who is kind enough always to agree to our request to address the dam professionals either physically and share the recorded message and greetings for successful organization of such activities. After giving the information about the future ICOLD activities, ICOLD board has decided to have vice chair in all ICOLD technical committee from Young Engineers Forum to involve them in a bigger way with the ICOLD technical activities and suitably making the changes in ICOLD bylaws, which is a great step. Thank you, sir. Now I invite Mr. Amit Gautam, Chair of the INCOLD YF, to say a few words on behalf of INCOLD YF on this occasion. Over to you, Amit. Yes,
Kalpana, just a second. I want to add
yeah,
one.
please.
I take this opportunity to welcome my friend Sifres, Vice President ICOLD for this presentation. And let me share that he has been guiding force uh, for many of the activities of ICOLD, and he all the time makes very active contribution in ICOLD board meetings. So I missed him out while I was giving my address. Welcome, sir. Welcome, Mr. Sifres. Yes, please, Amit Gautam, please proceed.
Thank you
Thank you, sir.
very much, Sharma. Of course, it is a pleasure for me to meet you here virtually, and all of us are willing to visit India. Perhaps we have to wait a little. Regarding the young forum of ICOL, I was honored to be in charge to renew the guidelines for the technical committees, and one of the first steps was to avoid the older people was a block for entering the new engineers in the committees. And the next step, as was announced by the president, is to give a more relevant role in the committees. Of course, this is a good news, but I would like to add something that is not only to give opportunities to the young, but to 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 give ICOL an opportunity to move forward the way to think for the future. We need the young. It's not only giving them opportunities, but also to take advantage of the activity, the new role, new way to think for the future, for the challenges that we had to face in this century. And this, I congratulate in advance the role of them in the technical committees, but that I am very sure that will be a great new for us. And thank you. I give my regards for all of you, and thank you very much for.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your thoughtful and supportive address. Thank you. Now I request Mr. Amit Gautam, Chair of the INCOLD YF, to say a few words on behalf of INCOLD YF on this occasion. Amit
Thank you,
Gautam,
ma'am.
please.
Thank you, ma'am. Honorable President INCOLD, Vice President ICOLD, President YF, Mr. Elias, YF board members, and other eminent personalities present all across the globe. It is a moment of extreme pleasure for me to welcome you all on behalf of INCOLD YF team, especially our special guest, Ms. Maria. I would also like to extend my greetings to all the guests present to attend the webinar and our YF members. I am sure this session will enlighten us and provide all the approaches to deal with the future problems. We highly appreciate these sort of activities, which are not which not only provide the insightful of topics, but also keeps up the interconnectedness feeling, which is very much required in this pandemic era. With this, I would take a special note to thank Mr. Elias, President ICOLD YF, to take this initiative and organize this webinar with us. Thank you. Thank you so much. And hope to have a good session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Amit Gautam, for your brief speech. Thank you. Now we invite Mr. Alias Papitstar, Chair ICOLD YF, to make a small presentation about the YF general information. Mr. Elias.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to make this webinar a successful event, and thank you for ICOLD President words and the Vice President of ICOLD, Mr. Rick Sifris, the President of INCOLD, Dr. Sharma, and YF to accept this challenge to make take this opportunity to show exactly what we are planning to do regarding our commitment to the board. And I have to thank also, I see here Mr. Hamed from Morocco Committee, and thank you. It was a Vice President for Africa, and thank you for being with us also in this meeting. I will make a general information regarding YF activities. If you start seeing, just let me know.
We can see it.
We can see it.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I will make, as I said, a general information on ICOLD Young Engineers activities. We have here the YF board with myself as a chair, and we have colleagues from all over the world, from Slovenia, Russia, Italy, US, France, and Canada. And this is a good opportunity to share experience between not only the board, but all YF national committees. The YF national committees have to say that the purpose of the committee was in 2009. Young professionals proposed to the board the creation of the YF. This proposal was approved in 2010, and in 2011 we had the first official meeting in Lucerne, Switzerland. It was a great event. I was present at that time. At the present, we have 23 national YF committee establishers. As you can see here on this slide, many of these countries started their activities on the behalf of their national committees, and India was the last one, as you can see here, and we were at the establishment of the INCOLD. It was a very good event. What is the mission of ICOLD YEF? Has the president of ICOLD said, is a group of persons to start sharing their experience to the young generation. The main objectives is, as you can see here, provide an opportunity to connect and share experience, inspire young members to become members of the ICOLD technical committees, create network, provide opportunity to knowledge transfer. And when we talk about young engineers, we target people under 40. And we meet once a year, every ICOLD annual meetings. And now we due to the pandemic, we have our virtual meetings. And we have also the LinkedIn group that we have more young members and participate in the event. We have some activities planned. Next activities is the Congress next year. And we have the YF Awards, which we have every annual meetings. We will continue with our online meetings, and this is one of the events that we plan to do in the future, and keep a good relation with the board. Encourage, as Mr. Vice President said, encourage the young professionals to be part of the technical committees, because the technical committees are the core of ICOLD, and we have to be involved and engaged with this important committee of ICOLD. We will have in Marseille a mentorship opportunity, and it will be good to have all ICOLD family and to participate in this activity. We will request all national committees representatives to provide the contact names and details of their representatives, just to update our database. We have here the terms of the board now. We have myself, which my term will end next year, and 2 more members of the board. And this is a great opportunity to have people from other national committees to be engaged and make part of the board. We have 3 positions open in the board for the 2025 term. As I said, people under 40, and we encourage everybody to send their applications to our email, and or send a message in our LinkedIn group. A candidate should be supported by the national committees. This is something that we require. Typical terms of the board is 3 years. We prefer persons from countries where the next ICOLD meeting will take place. Geographic diversity is one of the things that we encourage, and no more than 1 member per country. This was the last meeting we had with the ICOLD board. We have here Mr. Michel de Vivo, the Secretary General, and they give us a good news about what ICOLD is planning to do. And we will have in November this virtual annual meeting that we encourage all participants of this meeting to take part. And we have also a discount of 40% for all young members. Just send an email to us or contact the INCOLD, and we will try to make this discount available for every young engineers who want to take part of the virtual meeting this year in November. And we will have many good sections to us. And thank you. I will take this opportunity to thank you all for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. You are always very supportive to INCOLD YEF right from the day of its official formation. On behalf of INCOLD, we would also like to mention that as a chair of ICOLD YEF, please consider Chair INCOLD YEF as a member of the ICOLD YEF steering board to join hands for organizing such activities in an effective way and to add more dam professionals as member of the YEF group. Now we invite today's resource speaker, Ms. Maria Guel-Pons, dam specialist from World Bank, who has very kindly agreed to share her experiences on the topic of today's webinar, the future of rivers. Let me introduce briefly about the speaker. Maria holds a double bachelor's in geotechnical civil engineering from the Polytechnic University of Catalonia and a Master of Science in Numerical Analysis from CIMNE, the International Center for Numerical Methods in Engineering. Her experience spans across a range of engineering consulting companies in Spain, Austria, and Switzerland, and as a research fellow in academia. She has worked 8 years as a senior dam safety officer in the Swiss Federal Office for Energy, managing a portfolio of 34 dams, and as a project consultant for UPONS in NISO. In October 2018, she joined the Geneva Water Hub as a scientific officer, where she created the research line on large dams and their role in transboundary water negotiations, the Water Talk series, exploring dam politics, and coordinated the summer school on water governance from the University of Geneva. She is currently a dam specialist in the Water Global Practice from World Bank, in charge of dissemination and training of the Global Practice Note on dam safety and advising World Bank projects involving dams. Her topics of interest are dam safety, integrated watershed management, green and grey infrastructure, risk analysis, natural hazards, disaster risk reduction, resilient infrastructure, complex systems, climate change adaptation, university, pedagogy, hydropolitics, and hydrodiplomacy. Now I invite Ms. Maria for making the presentation.
Hi, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for this long introduction. As you have seen, I with the years, I started as an engineer in numerical methods, working mostly in natural hazards, and I have ended up looking at a broad range of topics around dams. And this is what I would like to speak about today. I will now try to share my screen. Let me know when you see it. Can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Fantastic. So first of all, thanks for this invitation. I'm very, very pleased to open this webinar series of the Young Engineer Forum. This is a very important platform. This has been mentioned previously for your generation, for my generation, to exchange on lessons learned, to exchange about the projects we are doing, to keep on contact, because now the world is becoming very, very connected. So that's super, super important. I'm especially happy to be here today because as I didn't remember that now it's 10 years since the creation of the YEF. And I still remember in Austria, Florian Landstorfer explaining us about this project, like to bring together young specialists in the world. And now I see that it has evolved to the point that now it's going to be integrated as well in the ICOLD board. So congratulations to everyone who has been participating in making this possible. So the idea today is to show you global trends. And at the end, I would like to have a discussion with all you in how do we imagine future rivers and how dams can be reinvented to give answer to future challenges. So in 1 week, as you all know, there's going to be this big meeting, COP21 in Glasgow. And the main topic that it will be discussed is, of course, climate change. And sometimes like one image says more than 1,000 words. And here you can see how the global temperature has changed across the years. We often only look at the climate change impacts and forget its causes. Here you can see the graphics from the Great Accelerations. That was a paper which was published by Will Stephen in 2005, and he has been as well updating it. I think last time that he updated this data, it was in 2011, and he called these trends the Great Acceleration, and it has become the reference of the Anthropocene. The Anthropocene is the geologic era in which human impacts have modified Earth's geology and ecosystems. This is clearly marked, as you see here in red, in 1915. This has been coincident with the end of World War, with the development of industry and technology. Since then, what we observe is a ramping population growth, and you can observe here as well the difference between the most developed countries and the other ones which are developing. It makes a big difference. Just to say that the world is not in the same stage of evolution, and this is something that we have to take care in when we are designing things. Not only population is growing, but as well population is moving towards urban areas. That is very important because we are abandoning subsistence agriculture and rural areas, and we are moving to urban centers. So we are more concentrated in certain areas. So how do we deal with it? How are we going to feed and to provide water and energy to this growing population? Here we can see exactly the same trends in both things, water use and the primary energy use. That would be electricity mostly. So we all know that Earth resources remain the same, but we have to look to new technologies. We have to look as well to efficiency advances and improvement of common pool resource management and global adaptive policies to guarantee the subsistence for future generations in the Earth. This is what we call the sustainable development, and is the reason behind establishing the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. So, since the beginning of history, how humanity has been dealing with this, we have been building dams. As you know, the first dam in the world found until now dates from the 3000 BC in Java, in Amman. And we still have in service some dams in Japan and the Proserpina Dam in Spain, which was built under the Roman Empire. But dams are built in rivers. Rivers, as we know all, and sometimes we forget as well, they're very, very dynamics. I think this image can tell you that. Here you can see the Mississippi River in two forms. One is like the traditional form of going into the ground and mapping all the canals. And now here we see like an image from Leader, from the Mississippi, from Daniel Coe, that shows that the variability is very, very wide in space and in time. So what are the global trends? What is the actual picture in the world? We have been we have been building more than 58 large dams in the world. The countries that have more dams are China, America, India, and Japan. Here in this map, they are represented with these darker colors, which mostly correspond to developed countries. But because we have seen that we are developing, the population is really developing really fast, and to ensure as well the transition to a zero carbon society, we have seen right now a new global Hydroboom. So these red dots and dark brown dots, they are projects which are currently being built or planned in the whole world. And in particular, to note here is the concentration in the Amazon, and as well in South America, the Mekong River, and the Balkans. But not, I mean, there are like three different trends, if you want, right now in the world. We have a trend in building the new dams. This is what we see right now. We have a trend of refurbishing old dams. As you know, for example, India has this large program on rehabilitating dams. But as well, we start seeing a new trend in the United States and Europe about dismantling dams. This is mostly because some of them, they have become older, but as well, there's more environmental concerns about that. But what happened to the rivers with all this construction? So a couple of years ago, I think it was, there was a study published in Nature showing that 63% of world's largest rivers are blocked by dams. And as you all know, these dams, they disrupt the river connectivity. And currently, I think it's 1/3 of the world's longest river remain free flowing. In the beginning, Dr. Sharma, he mentioned that rivers are lifelines for human development because they support freshwater fish stocks. They provide food to 100 million of people. They deliver sediments to the deltas. They fertilize the ground, and they protect from the sea level rise. So all this infrastructure and this global picture, I hope it gives you like a sense on how important it is to keep like some of these rivers free flowing. Another thing that I would like to stress here, we always talk about water and energy, but we have to think or we have to remember as well that we have what we call the water, energy, food security nexus, because right now, 1/3 of the world food productions, it's still depending on rivers. That's a lot. It includes fisheries, irrigation, and everything. So here as well, in this map, you can see which areas they have water. I mean, they still can produce food and which waters not. There's like, if you see, there's very little areas that still producing this, and this is going to be worsened with the climate change. So just throwing a number, like by 2015, we will be 10 billion people in the earth. So we are going to have to plan about like massive changes in food industry, but as well in how we produce them, where we produce them, and the water that we use for production. Another problem that we have with dams blocking that amount of river flow is reservoir sedimentation. We have seen in the world, and this as well, it changes depending on the country we are talking, that all our reservoirs, they are highly sedimented, and they capture from 50% to 98% of sediment. So it's very important that when a new dam is built, we plan for the sediment management. This is very crucial, not only for the river itself and the ecosystems, but as well you have to think that they block from source to sea. That means that if you look at the deltas, what's happening with the deltas, we have like a mix between like a lot of population moving there, but as well subsidence. This subsidence is happening mostly because this combination of like more urban development, but as well less sediment arriving to the deltas. Of course, it also affects the dam itself, so it will reduce the capacity for flooding events, and for water storage, hydroelectricity production, but you have to really look at the global picture. Needless to say, there's a lot of ecosystem impacts. For example, when you build a dam, you're going to interrupt fishes. You're going to create in the reservoir probably some physical effects like stratification. Some dams we have seen that they have massive CO2 emissions, and again, the sediment trapping, it can generate alterations in habitats, in community shapes. So this is something that normally it's evaluated before we build a dam in this environmental impact assessment, but I think we have to be more aware that to control it during the whole life cycle of the dam existence. Another thing that is a bit related to the previous one is the social impacts. Again, when we build a dam, normally we do this environmental and social impact assessment, but we forget that society is as well like a ecosystem that lives around rivers and around dams. And actually, it's not only impacted by the construction and the resettlement, but it will also impact in the management and in the maintenance of the infrastructure. So here you see a bit how complicated and all the stakeholders that you have around dams and around rivers in this case. So this has been this graphic here. Some of you might remember it. There was a publication from the United Nations University that was a bit controversial because they were alerting that dams were aging and this will pose dam safety risk. And of course, like if we see the construction and this graphic, you have seen it a lot of times, like most of dams have been constructed between 1930 and 1970. And of course, we all know here in the engineering community that you can maintain dams if properly for hundreds of years, that's no problem. But but over the years as well, and due to climate change, we have seen more and more collapses in the States, in India, in Brazil, in Afghanistan, because of flooding events are more frequent. But as well, we have more population combined with this aging. So the problem that I see in this report, or that was highlighted as well as in the report, is like we need to keep our dams well maintained. But the big question is, how are we going to finance dam safety? So dam safety involves regular maintenance, where you have to upgrade the installations, you have to pay the experts, you have to maintain the instrumentation, you have to have an emergency planning ready, you have to invest in structural measures, both for aging dams, as we have seen the park is very, very old, but as well to climate change adaptations. And of course, you have to invest as well in capacity building. So this changes a lot between countries. Every country has different capacities to guarantee dam safety. And we all agree that we have like international guidelines that are very advanced. So this shouldn't be a problem, but the problem lies mostly in how are we going to implement it in the ground. So mostly if we see in developing countries, we have these implementation gaps because there's the lack of funding. But even in more developed countries, like for example, I don't know, Switzerland, where I have been working for a while, you see like a very big difference between the dams which are dedicated to the hydropower that are generating revenues that will pay for this maintenance, and other dams that are used, for example, for flood controls or for agriculture, that they do not have access to this funding and these finances to guarantee this proper maintenance. Another problem that we have is that rivers, they do not know boundaries. So globally, we have 286 river basins, which are shared by 153 countries. As you can see here with this map made by Robert Sachs, the watersheds boundaries, they do not coincide at all with the national boundaries. And this can pose a problem because as we are growing in population, this common resource is shrinking and these kinds of geographical settings can end in conflicts. For example, here we see in this dam some of the latest conflicts that we have seen in the world. You all have seen about, heard about the GER, the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia, but as well Rabun in Tajikistan, or all the problems that they have been happening in Mekong affecting fisheries. So now it's time for you, for us actually, to think about how can we ensure the future of rivers. And here I put like a line up of ideas that I would like to share with you, or to discuss with you, because what I think is that we should to start thinking a bit differently, not only seeing the dam as infrastructures that we have to build in our setting, but as well like be a bit more open and try to combine it, try to create new dam designs, combine it with green and grey infrastructure, new technologies, but as well engage with communities. That means that take your environment and your social setting as an element for the design of the dam. That is something that I think I haven't seen that much, and I would like to see it in the future. And as well communicate. We have seen that we are more and more people involved. We have seen that everything is very interdependent. And it's very important that we start talking as well with our fellows in landscape architecture, in laws, environmental specialists, social specialists, farmers, politicians, everyone, because we have a big challenge ahead of us. So with that, I would like to finish my presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Maria, for making an excellent and detailed presentation, sharing the global information on water and highlighting the important issues like sedimentation, which affecting the storage of dams, operation and maintenance issues in dam safety management. May we proceed further for the question answer session? May I request to the participants for their questions? May I request to the participants for their questions?
Can I start, ma'am? Ms. Maria, I mean, a great presentation. Just I would like to, hear more. In fact, not a question on the social impact issue, because this is something very demographically dependent thing. Then we have to very wisely evaluate that factors, because at some time you can go with all the parameter that attributes, but those things will not be applicable at the other things. So how we are concerned with those attributes, especially to wisely evaluate that social impacts.
So we are lucky that that social science is very evolved, and right now, and most I would say financier banks or people that are involved in dam construction and dam maintenance, they are involving it more and more. So I think we should rely on the specialists for that, but we should be incorporating it more in the designs of the dams, as I told you, but as well in maintenance, because until now, I always have been seeing reports on this actual situation and how we are going to compensate and the resettlement conditions for the people, but very little is done going naturally there. And I think this is like a task that the engineers should be doing partially. Of course, it's not our specialty, but paying more attention when we go to the field to ask the local people about what are your needs, because at the end, the end user of dams and the beneficiary, it's the people around. So we are producing water and energy for them. So we should listen to them again. What do they need? What are their concerns? What are their fears? And this has to do as well with, we should be more careful with how we are communicating the impact of dams, of dam building to the population on site. For this, first of all, to gain their confidence that we are there providing some some benefits, but as well for us, because sometimes when you come, as you say, like it changes geographically, culture is different and people see it different. So you have to be on site to ask the people there, what do you need? What are your fears? What do you think is best? What were your ancestors doing in your area? Because we have a lot of underground ways of storing water as well that could be combined with large infrastructure. So this is my take. So
Okay, thank you.
I have certain observations. Can I go ahead?
sure.
Hello.
Please.
Yeah. Yes. You had a very good presentation, but these large dams had a great contribution to the groundwater storage, and which ultimately gets released downstream of the dams, depending upon what type of dams is it. And these groundwater contribute to a great extent to the rebuilding of the rivers, depending upon the type of foundations. So those groundwater studies and groundwater measures must be taken into account. And on the other hand, whatever you mentioned, the dam for power generations, these dams are also very much helpful in regenerating the rivers downstream of the dam, because whatever the hydel outlet, discharge comes at the outlet of the hydel, that ultimately meets downstream of the rivers. And thirdly, the social development taking place around the dam, I will say, and along the rivers, right from the downstream portion of the dam, that has a great contribution in restoration as well as elimination of the river. Both it can regenerate as well as it will eliminate the river. So those aspects have also to be very much well should be taken well in account. And again, you have talked about conflicts. So these conflicts are not only transboundary international conflicts, but within the country also, depending upon the sharing of the boundaries. I will not call it interstate, but it is your river, it is my river. That concept has come up because you are getting benefited, I am getting dejected. That sort of things are there. So in that case, and what is happening that to resolve the conflicts, disputes, tribunals are being constituted. And what is more disheartening is that the area which these dams were serving right from the conceptions of the dam, those areas are being pointed out by some other areas which has not been into the planning stage, and by blaming that you have earned a lot, I did not earn it. I did not earn. I'm dying and you are earning. That concept and that social concept has come up. So there is a need, great need for society or social scientists, psychologists for maintenance of the dams as well as for maintenance of the rivers as well as rejuvenation of the rivers downstream of the dams. And because it is a long, it is too much of complicated issue, it cannot be simply summed up in a very small presentation. It was a very good attempt, and whatever I am explaining, that is my perception. It may have a lot of percussions and discussions, but all these things should be looked into, and we all should come together to serve as a team to the society and resolving or adjudicating the conflicts. That's my suggestion.
Thanks a lot. I totally agree with everything you have said, actually. So thanks for your intervention. And I really like a couple of things it came up. First of all, is the blaming. We are blaming each other too much. We are always engaging in this controversy of this is my river, this is your river. It happens in local settings. It happens between people living in the same village even. And again, like we have to think about this is our river, and our river, it means that it belongs to everyone, and it means that we have to think differently and learn to work differently, because it's a small resource and we are so many people. So thanks for your add-ons. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Can we move to the next question, please?
Yes, hi Maria. It was a very informative presentation. I just have one question because you were talking about the future of the dams, and you mentioned that most of the dams will be aging, even though they have a design life of 100 years. So once they start aging, the onus comes on the rehabilitation of these dams. So what's the state of the art? Like, what exactly is this? Where exactly is the science of this rehabilitation? What are the new technological developments being made in this rehabilitation area, which right now you are applying, or which you have seen, which you have experienced, which are actually helpful. So my question is, like, what are the advances which are being made into this rehabilitation, into the science of rehabilitation, which are being used right now, being used, and are being foreseen to be used in this rehabilitation of the dams in next 10 to 15 years?
Yeah. So regarding on technologies, I think this is constantly evolving. It hasn't changed a lot, I would say. Like, we are still working with the same material, but we have seen, for example, when a dam is aging, is not only to keep it in the proper maintenance, but the concrete is aging, and in some cases, where in the beginning we didn't know how the combination, how the chemistry between the aggregates and the concrete was going to evolve. For example, we have these problems with dams that are cracking because they are expanding after some years. For example, in these cases, what we have seen in Switzerland is that we are cutting the dams to allow the tension to be released by cutting the dam. So this is I would call it like a new technology, because we have to learn to live with a dam that was built to behave in a certain way, and now with the cuts, it's going to behave in a different way. So this is a technology that is coming out. Rehabilitation of dams mostly is to keep the dam. Mostly is, first of all, monitor it well to know when it's going to be deviating of its normal behavior, and then adapt it as it goes. New technologies, I would say, it has been mostly going in the sense of to assess how to better let the flood pass and the sediment pass. This is my take on that. But technology, I think it remains kind of the same. ICOLD has a lot of publication on rehabilitation and new techniques, but it's not my specialty, actually.
Okay. But anyway, thank you. Just one thing, in the chat box is a very interesting question which I found. Actually, you may have a look at it. It actually asks, like, what are the challenges that are being forecasted on the effects of climate change on the existing dams and the new builds, and what are some of the existing practice that require changes to adapt, and themselves to these climate change effects. So I had a similar question on the mind. So if you can, elaborate something on this.
Yeah, climate change is mostly that until now it was quite static. So we were planning, did the calculation in the beginning, we built the dam, and then we were sure that for 100 years, nothing big or was going to happen, maybe an emergency, but in principle, we had these periods of return. These periods of the return, now they are not that stable, they are changing, and the uncertainty is like our main problem. So how are you going to design dams for 100 years? So either you take, I would say there are two strategies. Either you think about or build the scenarios. So with the climatic models that we have, then you compute different types of possibilities that you can have, and you choose one of them or a range. And then you plan and design your dam accordingly. Or then the second strategy that you could have to face climate change, it would be like, we know that our design parameters are going to change over time. So instead of reviewing it once every 20 years, now maybe we have to think about, we have to review our guidelines every, I don't know, maybe right now it's every 10 years, for example, in Switzerland for hydrology, but maybe in the future we will have to revisit the guidelines every 5 years, every 2 years, depending on how high the impacts, how high the floods are going to become. And this it changes a lot, because like every country, every geographical area in the world is going to be differently impacted. It's just like we have to plan, or like to be ready to react more quickly.
So it's an amalgamation of not only the monitoring techniques at the site, but also the risks and the reliability practices of the design actually.
Excuse me, can you repeat, please?
Yes, so I just told like it's an amalgamation of not only the monitoring techniques at the site, but also the risks and reliability practices for the design practices actually. So both has to be incorporated.
What I think it's both. I think there's not a single solution to climate change, and every dam and every site and every culture have like to think about how they are going to adapt to this strategy. You have to do actually both. You have to be constantly monitoring. You have to implement what we call in management the change management techniques. So that means like be ready to shift your planning to another direction. So it's going to be involved in both, in my opinion.
Okay. Great answer. Thank you so much, Maria.
We also have some.
Can I
we
have
also
certain
have some
observations?
comments on the chat box. Mr. Andrek Sifres wrote, "I'm glad hearing so open-minded way to present the future of rivers and the role of dams on them. Congratulations, Maria. Rivers are veins of basin for moving liquid, solid, and biological charge. This must inspire a new concept of dams." I guess Mr. Sifres also raised his hand. Would you like to ask some questions, sir?
I'm sorry, you mentioned, for example, that the sediments are not only a problem on the dams, at the dam itself, but in the entire river, the entire basin. The basin it needs to flow to release liquids, but also solid, and this is one of the new concept that we state in the committee on role of dams in the river basin management that is already finished, but where there is a set of new ideas that we need to implement in the new concept of dams for the future. Another one is you also mentioned that the stakeholders are not longer the affected people, but active agents in the conception since the beginning. And this is the only way to be sure that we will have a sustainable and successful projects. And this kind, I congratulate you because you are facing exactly what I mentioned at the beginning, that we need new dynamic in the activity of ICOL and change slowly, but we need to change to move to another paradigm on dam concepts. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Enrique. Yeah, for sure. Like these are two very important points. First of all, like learn, because we are all very busy. We normally have a project and we are just concentrated in the technical details. We all have the knowledge for that, but sometimes we do forget like the impacts upstream. We do forget the impacts downstream. In the beginning, somebody was mentioning this reforestation of the waters, and this is super important as well, like to control the sediments going down, but as well like all this flushing management. There's like a lot of work being done, research work everywhere, but as well in the bank too, about how we can manage the sediments to ensure that they reach the deltas. And again, the people is super important. Like you have always considered just like the impact we have on them, but never the impact they have on us. And they definitely have a lot of things to say, I think. Thanks, Enrique.
Mr. DK Sharma also has raised hands. So would you like to ask some question, please?
Yeah, Maria, thank you so much for wonderful presentation. It was really nice. You covered almost all aspects of the dams. I just wanted to add here, you see, like one of the participants was talking about the impact of climate change on dam sites and how these dams would behave. See, like we have to keep in mind, there can't be a unique solution when it comes to the dams. Climate change impacts are site specific. And these impacts, we can't say what would be applicable in United States would be applicable in to India as well. See, we have to see even in India, when we are looking at the climate change aspects, we let me share with you. In India, we have divided the entire country into 39 subdivisions, and each subdivision in the country is going to have different impact of climate change. So we need to have adaptation measures which are site specific. But global adaptation measures, if we talk, we need to design these dams for the extreme events, and the extreme events, while designing the dams, new dams at least, we need to keep provisions for the extreme events. The regular, for instance, when we come talk about the design flood, we have to keep in mind that there could be extreme events. Like for instance, what recently happened in Uttarakhand in the northern state in India on 7th of February this year was a very unusual event, which probably had we kept some provision for or had issued guidelines for adaptation, the loss, especially in Tapovan Vishnugad project, would have been minimized. So that way, we have to have very regional or very site-specific adaptation measures for the climate change. Thank you.
Thanks. We could see it as a bad thing, actually, that we don't have a solution for everything, but actually see it in another way. You see it as a playground. We have like the world behind, in front of us. We have different regions. Some regions will have similarities, and I think that's where ICOLD and YEF play a very important role. So you or we will be able to pair different areas, different countries in different areas in the world that face the same problems, and they will choose for sure one strategy over another. And in these meetings that we're holding in ICOLD and YEF, we will be able to like put them in common and see what's working, what's not working, and to adapt better.
Thank you.
Mr. Viraj also raised his hand. Would you like to ask some question? Mr. Viraj Loliana.
Hello, Maria. It was nice presentation. Myself, Viraj, and my question is, what will be your thought on river morphology changes, and it affects the energy like hydropower dams and all. So, what would be the future regarding that, and what effects can on energy hydropower plant? So can you give more insights on that?
Yeah, river morphology. I have like a mixed background between the geology and the civil engineer. So sometimes we forget that's why I was showing you this Mississippi image. That rivers naturally they move a lot. They kind of occupy a lot of space, and they can travel for kilometers and kilometers. We don't see that in our lives span, but we can see it through image and through stratigraphy. When I see river interventions for flood protection in Holland, for example, they have some projects which are called Room for the River. Room for the River, they acknowledge that these dynamic things are happening, and they plan the flood protections according to this variability. So they acknowledge the dynamics of river. I think we are not there in the dam building yet. So we still build static construction there, and we expect there to be forever. And we forget that if we now plan to have lifespans of dams that are over 100 years, these dams in a way should be as well able to adapt to these changes in morphology. So either you can force it in the river, but as you know, nature is more powerful than we are, and it will just come and revert it into us. So I think we have to be a bit more dynamic in the way, sometimes not in the building, because in some cases the building is there and you cannot make like a movable dam. But you can adapt to these morphological changes by watershed management, like we were mentioning before, planting plants, and as well managing your reservoir better to let the flow pass when the flood needs to pass, and not to try to stop it. And again, like combine it with other techniques, combining with they were mentioning as well groundwater reservoirs or floodplains and things like that. So just be a bit more, I would say, more open-minded and embrace these dynamics, and learn about these dynamics and take them very, very seriously.
Thank you.
We have one more question in the chat box by Mr. Anik. Thanks, Maria, for the presentation. Can you please elaborate some of the challenges that are forecasted on the effect of climate change on existing dams and the new builds? What are some of the existing practices that require change?
I think we kind of addressed that before, but again, like the most important thing, it will be like flooding events. Like we will have more extreme events coming, sometimes without warning. Not only water, we have seen that now they come with a lot of sediment, with a lot of as well anthropogenic things blocking the spillways. We are talking about putting solar panels in reservoirs. We have to be very careful as well, because in one side is a good combination and it generates more revenues, but in the other side, these elements, they can block the spillways too. So this is one, floods, obviously. And then droughts. I mean, the contrary, maybe not for dam safety, but definitely for water supply and energy supply. What happens when we have like a long drought? We have to be planning for this as well. And again, this has to be done in combination with other techniques. We cannot only rely on dams. We have been relying on dams for most of the geological areas, but now in the Anthropocene, where we have this extra climate change impact, we cannot do that anymore.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, this is Hariharan. Maria, nice presentation. And I would like to just discuss about the point which you have raised about the revenue generated by the hydroelectric projects, as well as it is compared to the other projects like irrigation and other domestic purpose. Now, the same issue is faced by Switzerland, as you said, I heard it. The same is going to be the same case in our India also. So what are the challenges to make it more revenue earning, and so that the same can be used for the maintenance purpose of those dams? So what are your suggestions?
Well, ideally, at the end, ideally it will be that we have the same standards of dam safety everywhere, and regardless of this dam is going to be protecting floods or is going to generate electricity. Most of the dams, luckily, I think we have like 50%, they are multi-purpose. So this problem is solved by transferring some revenues from the hydroelectricity to maintain the infrastructure. So that's one thing. How can we address this? There's taxes, of course. We can tax the beneficiaries. We can have as well transfer from the revenues from completely another industry. For example, if one country has a lot of benefits in a particular industry, maybe it would be wise to have like a kind of insurance or security at the national level that maintains these dams. By now, for example, if I see in the case of Switzerland, the dams in Switzerland, they are privately owned. So all the charge goes directly into them. This cannot be extrapolated everywhere. If I think now in some developing countries that they don't have this capacity, or governments that they are not well established and they can plan for it, it's a bit more complicated. But I would say as well, like we have to adapt what we're requesting. So the request, they don't have to be always like big technologies and I don't know, satellites, artificial intelligence and expensive instrumentation. We can rely as well in very low cost basic measures to maintain our dams in proper conditions, and as well, as Enrique was mentioning, like involve the people. The people, they are living downstream. They have the maximal interest in that dam is well kept. So there are other ways that we can ensure dam safety. But there's no single solution. Let's see what we will come up in in following years, I'm a bit scared because we are, after COVID, we have a lot of and there will be like economic crisis for sure. And as you know, like safety in general, it's not the priority in all countries and in all cultures. So I'm a bit as well afraid, and that's why I was very happy, even if it was controversial, this publication from the United Nations University, like to see they were raising attention to the fact that dams are aging, be careful, people are going to live more downstreams of dams. How are we going to deal with it? How are we going to pay for all this rehabilitation? So that I think it's like the next place that you do in research, for example, where you should invest your time. Maybe this is a good topic. Like, how are we going to pay for dam rehabilitation and dam maintenance?
Thank you.
If we still have some question, I would request to the participant, they may write directly to INCOLD Secretariat for their questions and query. We will get back to you over the email. Thank you all. Thank you to all the participants for such an interactive question answer session. I would like to convey my special thanks to the dignitaries, ICOLD President, Mr. Michael Roger, ICOLD Vice President, Mr. Andrik Sifres, ICOLD Vice President, Mr. Devendra Kumar Sharma for their time and presence. I also would like to convey my special thanks to our speaker of the day, Ms. Maria Golpons, for sparing her valuable time for conducting today's virtual webinar. I'm sure all the participants have benefited from her vast knowledge shared during the program. Thank you all. Thank you. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Well done, Maria. Thanks, Elias. See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
So Elias, I wanted to ask you, when is the next webinar taking place? Because I really would like to come and hear